Growing up, I saw things. My mom pushed them off as they were just imaginary friends, like all parents do. But after a while, she started realizing it wasn't that. I had turned 9, and I had an agonizing fear of things following me and seeing things everywhere. My mother started taking me to church, but sadly, that didn't help. After a while, I stopped talking to her about it. I just didn't want to bother her with it. I grew in agony as these things kept bugging me. Fast forward 4 years, and one day a new one appeared. A lady with long black hair dressed in white, as skinny as all get out. I never saw her real face, since it was always covered by her hair, but she seemed like one of the nicer hallucinations I had. The lady just sort of followed me in the waking and dream worlds. In my dreams, I'd forget what we'd do, but I knew she was there. After a while, I started calling her Amnesia. That's just how I referred to her. I never really thought anything about it until one day in May of 2016. I was 15 at the time. I had come back home from a band concert, and everyone in my family was outside, along with the other people who were staying with us. Smoke was coming out of the house, and all the lights were off. I ran out of the car and asked what was happening. They explained that our 2 dogs were barking at something in the hallway, and Heaven, a girl staying with us at the time, had gone to see what was happening. In our hallway stood an 8-foot-tall, shadowy male figure. She had screamed and got everyone. Her stepdad started smudging and blessing the house. While I was outside, I stared and talked to one of Heaven's sisters about the figure. I explained that I had a hallucination that fit the description. I called him Dream Taker. After I said that, Heaven's sister had me tell my mom everything. About my dreams, my hallucinations, everything. When I told her about amnesia, all the color in her face went cold. She told me that, after I was born, she had taken me home to our apartment at the time. One day, she put me in my crib and then went to lay down for a bit. Just to be clear, my mother's bedroom was just across the way from mine, and she could see my crib from her bed. She had fallen asleep for a while, when she was suddenly awoken to what sounded like someone walking in the hallway towards her room. Her blood ran cold. All she could do was look in horror. There in the hallway was a pale, skinny lady. She had charcoal black hair that was a tangled drape over her face. She slumped over while walking as her white, tattered dress dragged behind her. She started walking into my room, and my mother immediately started to get up, but she couldn't. She felt as if an invisible force was binding her to the bed. The lady stopped and turned to look at my mother. Her hair swept from her face to reveal a face my mother could only describe as terrifying. She had no ease. They were black voids that seemed to pierce through my mother's eyes. Her jaw seemed broken and hung open, and a reddish-black ooze dripped from it. The lady let out a high-pitched scream, and I started to cry in my crib. The lady turned back around to my crib. She struggled as she listened to my screaming. Then I stopped. Everything was silent. Her thoughts ran through her mind. She couldn't think right. After a while, she could finally get up. She ran into my room to check on me. I was sound asleep, like nothing had happened. She grabbed a bat and searched the apartment to find nothing. Everything was the same as it was. She grabbed our phone and called our neighbor. "Hey, did you hear my baby cry? She was just crying a little bit ago." "What are you talking about?" "Your baby wasn't crying. Is everything okay?" I didn't know what to think. Was this lady a blessing or a curse? My mother also told me my grandma dwelled in black magic, and that it could be a byproduct of something gone wrong. But who knows, honestly. I don't know how I feel about it. My husband and I were honeymooning by driving our camping rig on overland and dirt roads from ghost town to ghost town. We'd pick a town and camp near it for the night, and we'd been doing that for about a week. Nothing special or creepy happened at any point. Just some nature and some history. One town I was very excited about was Garnet, Montana. It's just about an hour from Missoula, and we'd called our friend, who's an outfitter in Billings, for a place to camp. He said, "Just up the mountain. There are flat spots. Now we have a 17-year-old Toyota with big tires, a rooftop tent, and sleeping quarters in the cabin because we always travel with our 2 dogs and cat. So all we need is a decent spot, slightly hidden, and we're good." As we drive up the backside of the mountain off the main road, I see abandoned cars and a few rundown houses. Nothing's too weird, but I can't shake the pit in my stomach that's growing. We get further up and past the parking area for the ghost town, and the higher we drive, the more my instinctive anxiety kicks in. You know, the flight of fight or flight. Adding to that, my dogs are going nuts. Of course, I wrote it off as them needing to get out. So we finally find a flat spot, and I realize my husband and I hadn't spoken the whole drive up, probably 45 minutes. He goes to get out of the car to see if it's level, and I grab his hand, dogs barking, whining, and pacing, and say, "Please don't turn the lights off. I think I saw eyes before we stopped." He just looks at me confused and says, "Why, he has to, but he'll leave the cabin lights on." When he gets out, all I can think about is how it's watching. I don't even know what it is, but I sensed it followed us from where the eyes flashed. When he gets back in, I tell him not to let the dogs out yet, and he just says, "We just should go, something isn't right." Now, we camp a lot, and I get spooked, but my husband never does. We usually hang out, and I relax, and it's fine. He's never left a spot because I've been alarmed, so when he said we should go, I knew he felt it too. We head down a different road, the paved one to I-90, driving fast. I looked in the rear-view mirror, but the dogs were in the way, and the tint is so dark that you can't see well at night. But there was a rumble like something big was running. The tension is growing, dogs are pacing, he and I are bickering, and it starts snowing hard out of nowhere. We come around a turn, and a stark white rabbit dashes in front of the car, and we hit it. A hush fell over all of us after that until we got down the mountain onto a side road. All the anxiety we felt was gone. Cut to the other side of Missoula, where we camp. Zero creepiness until the next day. As we're driving back to Garnet, on the main mountain road we came out on, we notice a point when we ascend the mountain where we both start feeling nervous. I looked at my husband after we made the big turn and said, "Where's the rabbit?" It was gone. No carcass, no blood, no animal tracks, no trace. It had been there. I can believe that something got it, but there is no trace of it. We were the first people up, no other tire tracks besides ours on the way down, and I would think you'd see blood or something, but it was gone. The snow wasn't deep enough to have buried it because we could see our distinct tracks from the previous night. No rabbit. So we get to the ghost town, Sioux interesting, by the way, and we're talking to the rangers about the creepiness on the mountain, and one of the guys says, "Yeah, there's something up here. I wouldn't stay by myself at night." And the other smiles and says, "What exactly did you see and feel?" So I tell him I felt a deep, primal fear that it was old, not human, and hadn't been human for a while, if ever. I said it wasn't a ghost, and it wasn't a living crazy person. I said I felt like it wanted to eat me, which I know is strange, but I felt like we were being hunted. And I said at one point I thought I saw its red eyes, but I couldn't be sure, and I think it followed us from where I'd seen the eyes, like stalking. He says, "There's a Wendigo up here. Do you know what that is?" I didn't, but when he described the lore, I almost cried. That was it exactly, down to the eyes. A few months later, I'm telling this story to my stepmother, who's been researching American Indian symbolism, and she says, "You know what rabbits are, right?" Of course I do not. Rabbits are often believed to be warrior spirits, and they say that when the rabbit comes, he's fighting for you. That rabbit sacrificed himself for you guys that night. A chill ran over me, and my husband looked at me and said, "After the rabbit, it stopped chasing us." I had never mentioned that I thought it chased us. So this story takes place in late 2016, the year Pokémon Go came out, and the time the game had huge hype around it. So, being a teenager who wanted to play what everyone else was playing, I got the game myself, and I enjoyed it. One of my friends also played the game, and we had the idea of having a sleepover at my house and having our own Pokémon adventure together. We both thought it was going to be a lot of fun, so we got it organized, and my friend, who I will call Shelly, stayed over at my house. For the day, we messed around, ate snacks, and played video games on my PS4. It was at 10 p.m. when Shelly suggested we go out and play Pokémon Go. I brought up the fact that it was too late, but she persisted. So I asked my mom if it was fine, and she said it was. Sure, I had my concerns and all, but I honestly thought nothing bad would happen. This was due to the fact that I live in a small and quiet town. No one would be out this late, so it wasn't like we were going to get mugged in an alley. So we grabbed our phones and headed off down the main street of my town. We walked past the cemetery, then past the football oval. But as we passed the football oval, we saw a black Ford Territory parked by it. No lights were on, so we didn't think anyone was inside of it, so we walked past it. We got onto the footpath past the oval when we noticed the Ford pull up next to us on the footpath. We found it strange, but we kept walking anyway. We were passing the post office when we saw the same Ford pull into the car park in front of the post office. This gave us the suspicion that this random car was following us. So we kept walking, but at a faster pace. We walked past the post office and were now walking past our town park. As we were walking by the park, Shelley told me to hide behind the bush, which surrounded the park entrance. As we crouched down behind the bushes, we saw the Ford pull on at the park entrance. Confirming 100% that this Ford was following us, after what felt like an eternity for me, the Ford drove off, and we got out of the park and started running back to my house. As we started running back to my house, I looked behind me to make sure the Ford was gone. And what I saw horrified me. The car turned left at the end of the street. I originally thought that maybe he was just leaving the town, but then I realized. This park has 2 main entrances. The way he turned, he was driving to the second entrance, meaning he believed we ran to the other side of the park and was trying to cut us off that way. There was no argument left. This guy wasn't following us for safety purposes. He was chasing us. I am not an athletic person, unlike my friend Shelley, but in this instant, I was keeping up with him from the sheer fear of what would happen if this driver caught us or what his intentions were with us. We ran past the post office, past the football oval, and we were halfway past the cemetery when we saw the headlights of the Ford behind us. And I was terrified. There was nowhere to hide. It was a footpath with a giant fence separating the footpath and the cemetery. There was nothing to hide behind. Luckily enough, Shelley came up with an idea. She pointed out we were both wearing dark hoodies, and he said to put the hood over our heads, crouch down, and pretend to be rocks. At the time, I thought it was an absolutely stupid idea, but that was all we had. So we did just that and pretended to be rocks, and the Ford drove past us, no slowing down at all, which meant this stupid plan actually worked. After he drove past, we continued booking it. We were at the end of the cemetery when we saw him driving our way again. This time, there was a bin to hide behind, which we did. He drove past us again, and we continued booking it. We got to my house and locked the door behind us to ensure some kind of safety. We explained to my mom what happened, and after that day, she made some new rules. No more playing Pokemon Go at night, and my little sister was not allowed to go out by herself to play it. She wasn't happy about that, but at least we are still here to tell this story. I come from a small Midwestern town where you would think nothing bad really happens, but the past year seems to prove otherwise. We had a teen girl get kidnapped and was missing for 88 days. A local kid stabbed a father and son in the park on Halloween. 2 car collisions wiping out a Manpa family restaurant off our main road, and a few other oddball things for a town of 3,500 people. I'm trying to ignore the chaos around my boyfriend and I's life. We stay at home a lot, and away from people, and home is where you're supposed to feel the safest, right? In our case, not so much. A few weeks ago, after the stabbing happened, we started locking the deadbolt on our door. Being that we live in the basement of our apartment building, we've never seen the point before because, well, it's a basement. No one really wants to go to a basement for anything. But because things have been getting weirder and weirder around town, might as well be safe than sorry. A couple of nights go by and we are in the bedroom watching a movie. Our cat, who is laying on the end of the bed near the door, perks her ears up, looking out into the living room. We pause to hear what sounds like footsteps coming down the entry stairs. We stop the show and wait for a knock, expecting it to be a friend popping by. But nothing. Our cat, who's a rescue, continues to stare out of the room, but she's so nervous about everything that we ignore her and brush it off, thinking it's the foundation settling since it is an old building and it makes a lot of noise anyway. We hit play, and moments later the doorknob rattles like someone is trying to get in. My boyfriend grabs his pocket knife from the bedside, hops up, and quietly goes to the door. I silently follow behind him. There's about an inch of space between the floor and the door, so we could see if anyone was on the other side, but there was no shadow, and my boyfriend couldn't see anything through the peephole. Dumbfounded, we sit quietly in the dark living room for a while, listening. We didn't hear anything more that night. A week has gone by since the weird incident happened, and every night since we've heard footsteps down the stairs and the door rattling. I tried to rationalize and say maybe it's the upstairs neighbor we hear, or maybe it's finally cold enough where the building is shifting more than normal. My boyfriend has lived in the apartment for 2 years before I moved in, and he said he knows all the sounds and is used to the daily noises. But the entry stairs and door rattling are new. I know we both sound paranoid, but with all that's happened in our town, can you really blame us? 2 weeks, and the sounds keep happening. Our cat has become more and more wary of the door. She no longer runs to us to say hello when we get home. She slowly creeps around the couch and looks to make sure it's us. Our work schedules are different from one another, and I sometimes get home before my boyfriend does. And it being fall, it gets dark early, so we use a spotlight to light up the outside the door. Well, one day, I got home shortly after dark, and the spotlight was on. My boyfriend sometimes comes home for lunch, so I thought nothing of it. I enter the stairway, get to our place, and unlock it. The cat, who is scared and is hiding back by the kitchen, comes running to me as soon as she realizes that it is me. I looked in the kitchen and didn't notice anything, so I texted my boyfriend, asking if he stopped at the house for lunch. He replied, "No." Why? I explained how the spotlight was on, and the cat acted like someone was there. He asked if the door was locked, and I told him yes. I swear, as soon as I told him that, I heard someone run up the stairs and out of the building. And me being the scaredy cat that I am, I quickly get to our door and deadbolt it. I sat in the living room with our cat till my boyfriend got home a few hours later. I told him what happened, so he thought it would be a good idea to start locking the entry door as well. A day or two after, the spotlight was on again. Neither of us stopped by the apartment, whatever, no big deal. We felt safer because there were no more sounds. One night we came home really late, like 1 a.m. The spotlight was on. We got closer to the apartment entry and realized there was a person creeping around in between our building and the next door apartment building. They stood there watching us, not moving. Being uneasy about that, I moved as fast as I could to unlock the entry door, and my boyfriend right behind me locked it after we both got in. We head to our apartment door, and as we go inside, my boyfriend cuts the lights from the entrance hallway and waits outside the apartment door to see if the person would try to get in. We waited 15 minutes before turning the hall light back on. I went out to the hall and asked him if he thought that was the reason behind all the oddities. He said it could be, but I don't know. We just stood there and pondered things. I looked down the short hall to the left of our apartment door and noticed the one closest under the entrance stairs. I got nervous and uncomfortable looking at it, but something told me to go open it and look. So I did, and I couldn't believe what I saw. There were cans of old food, bottles of various drinks, a blanket, and a couple of other random things. My boyfriend told our landlord. The landlord explained to the police what happened, but the police won't do anything. So the landlord is securing the building a little bit better. But it's still only been a few weeks since all that was discovered, and I still get the chills and I'm scared about the what-ifs. About 2 years ago, I went to a party with my ex. At the time we were together. I had strep and decided to drink alcohol because, oddly enough, it made me feel better. Then the guy who was hosting the party pulled out a bong and offered us all to take a hit. An important side note, this was my first time smoking weed. He passes the bong around the table, and when it gets to the person before me, she loads the whole thing and can't finish it. It gets passed to me, and I get told to clean it. My now slightly drunk self thinks this will definitely be fine, and I do it. Now that I'm not used to smoking, I start hacking and coughing like crazy. I go to the bathroom to hack up phlegm and stuff into the toilet. My ex and the host's wife bring me water. The first drink is fine, but the second doesn't happen, as I now see an ocean in the water bottle and think I will fall in. I'm lucid enough to know this is just me being high, and I'm probably really funny, so I start laughing. Everything is funny until, all of a sudden, it isn't. A sudden feeling of dread came over me. I try to calm myself down by constantly saying I'm okay over and over. It doesn't work. Everything gets dark, and the next part is what I was told happened by everyone at said party. With my eyes completely shut, I shot up and power walked through 3 rooms full of people and furniture and sat in a corner chair. To me, I completely forgot what reality was and could only feel pain. I have several false awakenings where I think everything is real again, but it isn't, and I'm back where I was. During this, I see my friend's dad die and go through days of grief when I finally wake up for real. I texted him and told him about that, and he was weirded out. About a week later, his father passes away in the same way I saw in my baked-out weed vision. Totally creepy. I rarely share on here, not because I don't want to, but because I have in the past, and I wasn't good at getting my experiences across. But I want to give it another go. I want to know if anyone has experienced anything similar to what I saw back in 1999. So 20 years ago, it happened. On October 9th of that year, the only reason I know this is because 8-year-old me was watching the premiere of the Disney Original Channel movie Don't Look Under the Bed. I hope that little factoid doesn't deter from what I'm trying to get across. Before I continue, I'd like to give some background on the house I grew up in. I lived in Kensington, a part of Philadelphia that has the largest open heroin market, and so it looks like The Walking Dead with drug addicts slugging around everywhere. And it wasn't uncommon to see some of them go into the back alleyways to shoot up. We could see this from our bedroom windows. I was 4 or 5 years old the first time I saw something out of the ordinary. I remember it as clear as day. My siblings and I were playing in the middle bedroom, having a good time being kids. My mom had just introduced us to her new boyfriend at the time, and they came upstairs and watched us from the hall. I don't know what happened, but during our fun, I got the feeling of being watched, and I just had to turn in that direction, which happened to be the one window in the middle bedroom. I looked out and saw what at first appeared to be a man, but I looked closer and noticed that he didn't have a face and that his skin from head to toe had the texture of a wrinkled black plastic bag. I remember it reflecting the orange glow of the streetlights and being scared. I was staring for a good 20 to 30 seconds, and quickly turned to my mom, who was standing at the door, and said, "There's somebody watching us." She rushed to the window, but it was gone. Now fast forward, and many events will follow. I'm on the couch watching Disney Channel. It was an ordinary day. I waited all day to watch this movie, and so I sat downstairs alone to do so, which was rare, for I was always afraid at this point in life I would see shadow people regularly, and other paranormal phenomena would happen. But I felt pretty good. Besides, my siblings didn't seem interested in the movie I was watching, plus my mom had cable in her room and the cable box had a chip so we could watch PPV for free. So they stayed upstairs. Now, like I said, everything was going well when, about halfway through this movie, I see out of the corner of my eye someone step into the doorway of our kitchen. I turn up to look, and I see a figure standing there. It looks like a man. The only difference is that he's as white as snow, his skin and his clothes as white as a blank piece of paper. But his eyes were so black they were void-like. I didn't scream or run away either after witnessing this person or thing just appear in our kitchen doorway. I just stared at it, and it stared at me back. So I slowly got up and made my way upstairs to where my siblings were trying to explain to my older brother that I saw something downstairs. The creepy thing is that he or it didn't move from his spot, even as it slowly left my view as I went up the stairs. I also did not feel any negative or malevolent energy from it. It was just startling to see an all-white man thing standing there. I was used to shadowing people and also that bag man from earlier. So my question is, has anyone else ever encountered a pale white person with black eyes? And I'm not talking about Bex. This was something totally different. I was in year 7, and it was the last week of term 3. My mother likes to buy random things from the OP shop and give them to us. This time, it was an Egyptian painting. She hung it on my wall while I was at school, and I didn't find it until I came home. I shrugged it off and said thanks to my mom. A week passed, and I kept getting this strange feeling of being watched. I carefully examined the painting once more. It had a congregation of people, and around the border were misshapen heads. Only now have I truly realized how creepy it was. I gave it to my older brother, who half-heartedly accepted the gift. 1 week with it, and he came down to my room. His eyes were wide, and he was drawing shallow, shaky breaths. I asked him what was wrong, and he explained. He said, "I was minding my own business in my room when that painting you gave me fell off the wall." That's what he told me. "So, just put it back up." That was what I replied with. "I went to put it back up," he says. Okay. I was curious as to why he was telling me this when there was nothing wrong. But I didn't know the half of it. When I walked over to put it back up, I saw all the eyes of the people roll to look at me. He tells me. I stare at him, my mouth agape. What? I was worried, scared, and freaking out. I went to my mom and asked her to take the painting back. I didn't tell her what had happened, and I swear, as she was taking that thing out of the house. The eyes rolled to look at me. Dozens of eyes were staring at me as they were being dragged away. It still haunts me to this day, and I can't fathom it. Was I seeing things? Or were there different forces at play?